Joining me now, MSNBC legal analyst and former assistant U.S. attorney, Mimi Rocah. She's going to give us the prosecutor's view of this. And MSNBC legal analyst and criminal defense attorney, Danny Cevallos, who obviously will be playing the defense here. So, Danny, I'm going to start with you. You're Gordon Sondland's lawyer. You've made one revision, and you didn't disclose, perhaps you didn't even disclose it to your lawyer, in neither time, your initial testimony nor the revision of this second phone call. Now what do?
Well, as a defense attorney, some days you eat the bear and some days the bear eats you. With Gordon Sondland, the bear is going to be eating him because anytime a witness starts out having already given two inconsistent statements, some of them sworn, and is now testifying for essentially a third time, he is going to get eviscerated. So the only real avenue of defense to explain the inconsistencies in testimony has to be a horrible memory. Anything else appears intentional, and it appears deliberate, and it information. He's got a very difficult day of testimony approaching, and he's going to have a lot to explain just in terms of his prior inconsistent statements alone.
Mimi, what do you do with something like this? Because you need the credibility of the witness, but a second revision just hurts this witness's credibility. I don't care whose side you're on.
Well, yes, you need his credibility, but I think it's pretty clear at this point that Sondland had a motive to lie, and the motive here was to protect the president. So if you're the Republicans, in some ways you hurt yourself. The more you show that he was covering up for the president, the more guilty the president looks. And at the end of the day, you know, fighting over and arguing over and shredding Gordon Sondland really makes the president look worse, because it's not just Gordon Sondland who would be admitting, yes, the president said that. You now have these two other witnesses who heard the conversation. And remember, you have the phone call where Trump is talking to the president, and it's exactly in line with this phone call that we've now heard about between Trump and Sondland, right? The report is that Trump was asking Sondland about the investigations. Is Ukraine doing them? Well, guess what? The day before that, the president was on the call with the president of Ukraine saying, I want you to do these investigations. So it's really hard for me to see how at this point, first of all, Sondland doesn't admit to it, unless, as Danny says, he just says, I have no memory.
All right.
And second of all, how they get away from those facts, how the Republicans get away from that being true, having happened.
Mimi, what's his legal exposure right now?
Sondland?
Yeah.
Oh, I think he's definitely at risk for perjury. But look, I will say perjury is a very hard crime to prosecute. For the reasons that Danny just said, there's almost always the I forgot way out. It depends on how specific the questions were that were asked of him to begin with. You know, how much does he have wiggle room in the answers he gave? Was he asked if he had any conversations with Trump about this? And if so, you know, about what? Like, how was it phrased? So he may have some wiggle room, but he definitely, at this point, given that, you know, Bill Barr is not going to be the Attorney General forever. And I don't just mean a Democratic Attorney General. I think any prosecutor would take a good look at his prior testimony and his revisions, no matter what their political party, any honest and independent prosecutor. But again, I think this is really about Trump and the inescapable facts that are just building up brick by brick. And this is another brick that he did a shakedown of the Ukrainian president.
Danny, is it possible that Gordon Sondland got advice from his attorney that said, don't disclose that call unless you are so specifically asked the question in such a way where not disclosing it would look like you're covering up? Is there any possible an ethical defense attorney could have given him that advice? Or do you think it's most likely that Sondland withheld this from his own attorney?
Most of the time, as a criminal defense attorney, I think most criminal defense attorneys will tell you that most of the time clients present the story that they want their lawyer to believe, so that they'll go out there sword and shield in hand and fight for them. And it's unfortunate for clients that they do that, because attorneys need to know the whole truth. But I have wanted to be a fly on the wall for Gordon Sondland's meetings with his attorneys, because not only that incident you just talked about, but there was a moment where they had to have him in a meeting and say, hey, you got to consider revising your statement, because it's looking like you may have given something that isn't accurate. So Gordon Sondland has probably had a lot of really difficult meetings with his attorneys for several different reasons concerning his testimony and phone calls and things that maybe he thought were significant, maybe he thought were not. And building on Mimi's point, she's absolutely right in that prosecuting perjury, there is some wiggle room for defendants with galactic memory loss. And that's the kind of thing that can make a perjury prosecution even more difficult.
The easiest way to figure out this phone call situation, Mimi, would be simply subpoenaing his phone records. But this isn't a normal investigation. I don't think Congress can get their hands on the phone records of State Department employees.
Well, it depends what kind of phone was used. I mean, it sounds like it was an unsecured phone. I mean, it could have been personal phones that were used. We really don't.
Well, there's that issue, too.
Right.
He may have violated some sort of classified, but that's a separate situation, I would assume.
But, I mean, even if they do that, look, the phone records would show that the call took place, and that would be very good corroboration. But I got to tell you, as a prosecutor, if I had this case in front of a jury and I had two independent witnesses who, you know, of course, Republicans are going to try to impeach them, but what really are they going to have saying they overheard this? And you have a phone call where you have Trump's own words that sound so very much like what we're hearing about. I would not be afraid to go in front of a jury with that evidence and say this happened. And I think a jury would believe that.
Danny, Andrew Weissman said that he thought the president made a mistake yesterday by saying he doesn't remember any can't recall that phone call because he says now the president can't rebut what Sondland says about what the call was about.
Yeah, the reason this phone call, you've keyed right in on why this phone call is so important, because prior to yesterday, President Trump's defense was developing as two-pronged. Prong number one is, I don't know any of those other people. I don't know what they were doing. I know nothing about it. And then prong two is, well, the one thing I did admit to, the four corners of that memorandum, that is perfectly okay. The phone call creates a problem because it creates a nexus between President Trump and Gordon Sondland, who was boots on the ground involved in whatever this Ukraine campaign was, at least allegedly.
And Danny, if you were at this point, if you tell Gordon Sondland, throw yourself on the mercy of this impeachment inquiry at this point, just let it all hang out?
That's right. I mean, obviously, no matter what he says, each side is going to have grounds to say that he is completely fabricating and ask what is a very old question in cross-examination with prior inconsistent statements. It's almost hacky. It's, were you lying then or are you lying now? Now we're on third instance of potential inconsistent statements. He's got a real challenge ahead of him.
But the Democrats should embrace that and say, you were lying to protect the president. And he only tells the truth when other people come out with it. That's the pattern here.
And now you guys have just shown why this hearing with Sondland on Wednesday, if you're following this story, you're going to want to stop whatever you're doing and watch. Mimi and Danny, thank you for sharing your expertise with us. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.